Okay, I want to explain harmonic progressions. Now, if you studied in your undergraduate theory, if you studied theory with the Kostka-Payne tonal harmony book, then you had a relatively complicated graph that showed you the possible progressions. But I want to simplify it a little bit, and I want to talk about root movements. So when I talk about root movements, I want you to think of just the root of the chord, and it doesn't have to be in the bass. Now, I will show them in the bass primarily, but they don't have to be in the bass. So if I have a triad, this is the root. Roman 6 in C major, this is the root, right? So whatever note the Roman numeral is named for, that is the root of the chord. So when I talk about root movement, I talk about the interval from the root of one chord to the root of the next chord. So if we're in C and I play, then I go from Roman 1 to Roman 4. Now you see the root went up a perfect fourth, but we should rather think of it as a fifth down. So because I can also go, but of course fourth up is the same as fifth down. But we think of it as commonly as fifth down in Western art music. In jazz music, we may actually think about a circle of fourth and go fourths up, but it's the same thing, just you think of it differently. So one chord to a four chord is really a fifth down or a fourth up. Then going to five is a root movement of a second up, and from 5 to 1 is a root movement of a fifth down, right? So that's what I mean with root movements. The three common root movements are fifth down, third down, and second up. So if I were to play fifth down, from 1 I go to 4, or from 4 I go to 7. Except the 7 chord, Roman 7, is usually in first inversion. So from 4, but the root is still the 7th scale degree, so it's a root movement of a fifth down. So now, if it's a common root movement to have fifths down, but there is one exception, and that is that Roman 7, in this case in first inversion, a root movement, a fifth down, would be going to 3, but that is not common, so that is an exception. And please note that the exception involves the 3 chord. All the exceptions to the common root movements that I will explain involve the 3 chord. What we can remember is that Roman 3, that means the chord built on the 3rd scale degree, is the least common chord in tonal Western music. Right? So we usually don't go from Roman 7 to Roman 3. But Roman 3 can go to Roman 6, that is a fifth down. And Roman 6 can go to Roman 2, that is a fifth down. And Roman 2 can go to 5, that is a fifth down. And Roman 5 can go to 1, of course. That is a fifth down. So 1 can go to 4, 7 does not go to 3, so that's an exception, but 6 can go to 2, 5 can go to 1, 4 can go to 7, 6 can go to, no, 3 can go to 6, 2 can go to 5, and that's all. Root movements of third down is also a common root movement. That means we build a triad on any scale degree, like first scale degree, and then the next chord, the root would be the 6th scale degree. So that would be Roman 1 going to Roman 6. If we go from Roman 6, a third down, we get to Roman 4. If we go from Roman 4 a third down, we go to Roman 2. If we go from Roman 2 a third down, we go to Roman 7, except the Roman 7 usually appears in first inversion, but the root is there, in this case, not in the bass. And from Roman 7 a third down, we can go to Roman 5. Now it's not this interval because the root is actually from Roman 7. The root is here, so the B going to Roman 5, usually 5-7, so that's a third down. Now 5, if it were to go a third down, would go to Roman 3, and that is an exception. 5 does not go to 3 commonly. So that's one exception. Again, this exception involves the 3 chord. And in fact, the 3 chord does not go to 1, which would be a third down. That is not a common root movement either. So here, with the third down of root movement, we have 2 exceptions. 5 does not go to 3, and 3 does not go to 1. But 1 can go to 4, 4 can go to, 1 can go to 6, I'm sorry, 6 can go to 4, 4 can go to 2, 2 can go to 7, 7 can go to 5, and then we cannot continue this pattern, so we go to 1. So if we talk about root movements, that doesn't mean that the root movement is always the same. It can be, you can mix up the 5th down, the 3rd down, and the 3rd type of root movement is 2nd up. So if we build a chord on the 1st scale degree and go a 2nd up, it would lead us to the 2nd scale degree, so that is a 2 chord. So we can go from 1 to 2. We commonly, how common is it to go from 2 to 3? Not common at all. That is an exception. 2 usually does not go to 3. But 3 can go to 4. 4 can go to 5. 5 can go to 6. That's called a deceptive progression. 6 can go to 7, except usually in first inversion. And 7, here's the root, goes to 1. So the exception with the root movement of 2nd up is 2 does not commonly go to 3. But all other chords can go a root movement of a 2nd up. So if we can rather think of the root movements, common root movements of 5th down, 3rd down, and 2nd up, with exceptions that involve the Roman 3 chord, then it is much easier to make up music. And the real music then mixes these root movements. So I can improvise, going from 1 to 4 to 2 to 5 to 6 to 4. No, this is actually 2 in first inversion. 5. And so on. So again, 5th down, 3rd down, and 2nd up. The exceptions involve Roman 3. And what we can remember with regard to Roman 3, the chord built on the 3rd scale degree, is that it usually only, what precedes the 3 chord is usually only the 1 chord. From 1 we can go to 3. In fact, we can go from 1 to anywhere. 1 going to 3 would be a root movement of 3rd up, but we don't think of it like this. We think of a tonic can go anywhere harmonically. The tonic triad can go to any other harmony. So we can go from 1 to 3, or we can approach the 3 chord with a secondary dominant, but that will be a separate video on secondary dominants. And where the 3 chord can go to, so what follows after the 3 chord, there are only 2 possibilities. One is Roman 6, really a fifth down, or Roman 4, which is a second up. So from a 3 chord we can only go to Roman 6 or to Roman 4. Approaching Roman 3 we can really only come from Roman 1, or later we will learn we can also come from a secondary dominant. So email me if you have any questions.